Welcome back to 24 Hours on Our Streets. In this third episode, we will speak with local experts in addictions and mental health to discuss the topic of homelessness from their perspective. Because of the negative stigmas and the shame felt by so many, I have protected the identities of many of the participants in this project. My name's Lynette.
Lynette?
Yeah, nice to meet you, Leo.
Leo.
Very nice. What would you want people to know about what it means to be homeless?
That's a hell of a question to ask. Willing to do whatever needs to be done. People think I can't because I miss one arm. I talk with a speech impediment, and you'd be surprised what I can do.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to them about how it feels to not have a home to come to or to go to at the end of the day?
Try to be homeless for 5 days. Just be homeless for 5 days. Try not to depend on other people. Depend on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way you can make it through life, is depending on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need help. Can I just live my life?
Mm-hmm.
I like doing things myself.
Your way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's everyone's human right, you know, to live your life how you want to live your life.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Elliott. I'm a registered nurse. I work on the ACT team in Kamloops, and I'm the team lead. ACT team stands for Assertive Community Treatment Team, and what we do is pretty much in the title. So we do assertive community outreach. So we are out in community, stomping pavement, making connections with people on the streets, and servicing clients with severe persistent mental illnesses.
What you do, and why is it important to the community?
Why it's important to the community is because we are the people out there servicing the most entrenched population that we have. The disenfranchised homeless population have difficulty accessing healthcare services. We bring healthcare services to them where they're at. So we will be going into shelters, we will be going down back alleys, we go into people's homes and service them directly. So I think it's a very important thing for us to exist in Kamloops. This job is important to me because every person is a person. Every human deserves to be treated like a human. And the way I look at it and the way that I build capacity for people who use substances or are experiencing homelessness or suffer from mental illness, 80% of the people that experience substance use have had a history of childhood trauma. So to me, I look at these people like failed children of the system. And so it is our responsibility now to take care of those failed children. The people that I work with are very much at risk for being unhoused. They are either housed or they're housed precariously, meaning that they don't have permanent housing situations. We can look at it in a lot of different ways. So we have clients that may be in facility, will be transitioning out into community and have nowhere to go. We might have clients that are incarcerated that once again discharged will have nowhere to go. Additionally, people who are close to being homeless are typically not able to afford their rent month. That puts you at risk. If any situational stress were to come along in your life, could put you at risk for homelessness. So my clients, being low income, most of them on disability, on welfare, are very much at risk for being homeless. Yeah. No, people who are precariously housed affects a wide range of the population. I see it absolutely with the clientele that we work with based on their socioeconomics. But due to, let's say COVID and the stressors that applies to families, lower class, middle class, that's affected the job employment rate as well, and not to mention environmental factors like the forest fires we've had and things like that, displacement. This all impacts people's ability to pay their bills, the rising cost of groceries. All of this impacts us, which puts all of us at greater risk for being precariously housed.
What do you think are the outcomes for youth who were from families that were precariously or unsafely housed?
Youth that come from a precarious house situation, I think, would be at greater risk of being unhoused in the future for several reasons. The fact that they're coming from lower financial standings means that maybe they're not able to access education as a secondary education as easily, or maybe they aren't able to have the same kind of employment opportunities as other people. So they are initially at the bat kind of behind that advantage, not having family support, right? Not having family support, maybe parents giving them money to get their first place, getting off and getting started. So I think they're inherently behind.
Just with that,
Yeah.
does that contribute to complex mental health issues in a person later in life, having these circumstances?
That's a really interesting question. So what contributes to a mental health diagnosis is a biosocial, psycho, environmental in play. So there's no one thing that causes a mental illness. So the fact that your social background, meaning your income, your living environment with your parents, that is an impact of mental illness. Absolutely. Is it the one impact of mental illness? No. So
Big solutions that you see in a community like Kamloops, which we could enact right now to speed up solutions for those struggling with mental health and or substance abuse?
Well, that's actually a really interesting question. And the problem is lack of availability and lack of affordability. We are working towards those two things. The BC government has allocated funds. Our municipality has allocated land. But the infrastructure for getting these things underway in comparison to the increase in our homeless population in such a short period of time just doesn't equate. So what I would like to see is have that infrastructure speed up. So we've seen things in Kamloops like the container buildings. Those can be rapidly built, which is wonderful. So something like that would be great. The other big thing I think would be very important is more allocation to shelters. Shelters were 95% at capacity this past year. And they are utilized by our clients very often. They are utilized by people on a very regular basis or intermittent basis. And I think they need to have more beds available, especially in the winter. 112 unhoused people in Kamloops is from the PIT count of this 2023. Yeah, count. It's a group of volunteers that for 24 hours will go out into the city and try to count all the homeless populations. During that time, they do perform surveys to determine kind of what their ethnic backgrounds are, what demographic they fall in. Some participate, some don't. But that doesn't represent truly the real numbers of homelessness. 312 is conservative. There are the hidden unhoused as well.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the hidden unhoused?
Hidden unhoused are those people that are maybe staying with family members, couch surfing on friends' couches. Again, people who might be incarcerated or in a facility that have nowhere to go.
What does it feel like? Like, what's going through your mind when you don't have a place to go home at the end of the day?
Chrissy. I am a registered social worker in the role of vocational counselor with the ACT team. The ACT team is a multidisciplinary team that works with individuals with primary mental health, secondary substance use issues. So these individuals could be housed, they could be unhoused, and the best thing about the team that I work with is that we're a very assertive outreach team. So we get to go all over town to reach our folks. So we're in shelters, we're in hospitals, we're going into supportive housing, we're in the back alleys, we're down in the beaches. So it's a great team that we can really reach out to do good work with the people that we support. I think what we do is important to the community because I think it's very important to the people that we work with to help lower or reduce barriers for them to be a part of the community and to be a part of society, and to help reduce the stigma that comes along with people with mental health or substance use issues. I think being able to work with somebody side by side and one-on-one and meeting people where they're at helps the community see them as a broader part of that community and open up doors for them to be able to work alongside other people in community, be a part of a neighborhood, be a part of a group, or be a part of the working class, and really help to make it so there isn't such a division between the people that we work with and the society around them. There are a ton of barriers that the people that we serve face on a day-to-day. So ultimately, like, there's housing barriers, there's medical barriers, there's barriers to access services, there's barriers to transportation, there's barriers to treatment, there's barriers to just day-to-day living, having basic needs met, having a safe place to be at night, being able to wash your clothes, have a shower. Like, there's barriers to the people that we serve that are just everyday, normal, daily routines to the rest of us. We typically deal with adults, and again with mental health or substance use issues. So it can be a range of ages, a range of genders, a range of ethnicities. So we really have a full scope of population of people we support. We have a good mix of people that are unhoused, street entrenched, precariously housed, or housed. So I think that the majority of the people that we work with would fall into that category of a precariously housed, which means basically living day to day, not really knowing where you're going to lay your head at the end of the day, right? So you could be looking at people that are staying in motels with family, living in cars, couch surfing, that kind of thing. But I also think the broader scope of being precariously housed also falls into people who don't have a sole ownership of their own place. So we have worked with a number of people who have been long-time tenants in apartment buildings, for example, who get rent evicted and are unable to return because their rent is just too high for them to afford. People living in shelters or supportive housing, if they're not able to follow the rules that are in place, or that are experiencing a mental health crisis or engage in substance use, that housing is always precarious for them. There is nothing guaranteeing that they will continue on with that housing if they're not able to meet those rules or follow those expectations, which a lot of the individuals we support, go through periods where they're not able to follow those rules or be a part of those housing complexes. I think that homelessness is a result of poverty. I think that homelessness is a result of situational crises and failed systems. I think that complex mental health issues can be exacerbated by or caused by homelessness, but I don't think it's the root cause of homelessness. I think there is an increase of costs that everybody is facing that is completely unmanageable for anybody on an income assistance or PWD amount, which is just over $1,400 a month for a single person. So no amount of budgeting that you do is going to allow you to cover your food costs, your clothing costs, your housing costs, those basic human needs that everybody needs to feel safe and secure and become successful it's just not available to those people, right? And then if you look at a systems failure, like, we know that 46% of the respondents in the PIT report were youth, and 35% of those were children in care. So in the foster system, we have an age out rule. So once you hit 19, where are the supports that come next for you, and where are those youth supposed to go? Because no minimum wage job, again, is going to bridge that gap to get you into a housing market or a rental market. We have a pay-for-service system for foster families. So once the youth turns 19, foster families no longer receive a monetary compensation to provide that care. So quite often they are left to leave the home. If you look at situational crises, any one of us can experience a situational crisis, a trauma, a medical issue, a loss of a partner, a loss of a child, a loss of a job. There's so many multitude of factors that could happen to anybody that could result in homelessness with or without a complex mental health issue. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're all one paycheck or trauma away from the potential of being homeless. It's interpersonal traumas or environmental traumas. Those are things that are carried over through the families and through the youth if they're not able to get that support, early on intervention. And again, it comes back to being able to for people to have their needs met. So basic needs, food, clothing, shelter. If you aren't able to have those provided for you, or you're in a constant state of, fight or flight, like where are you going to get your next meal? Where are you going to be able to go to be safe? Is your family unit a safe place for you to be? And when you're in a constant cycle of crisis, you can't use your brain properly. You can't think properly. You can't function properly. You can't pre-plan. You can't do these things to be able to, move forward and achieve. So I think like the long-standing would be just the root of trauma and the everlasting effects of that trauma. And trauma isn't the event that happens, but it is how the people perceive those events, right? And the supports and everything that they had set up for them. So one person's trauma doesn't mean that since that happened with that person, or I grew up in a poor family, or I was spanked as a kid, it should be fine for everybody. That's not how it works, right? So I think everybody's situation as a youth, depending on their natural support systems of educations or neighborhoods or communities or families, makes a huge difference in what we see with the youth and the homeless population today and how they're able to move forward. I think Kamloops is in desperate need of shelter beds, permanent shelter beds that can support people in a holistic model that have properly staffed, properly trained people there to provide wraparound services, that are trauma-informed, that are knowledgeable of truth and reconciliation, that can work with LGBTQ squared youth and adults, and just be that safe place for them, right? When you're thinking about people sleeping out in the streets that are using substances, they have no reason not to, and they use it as a protective factor to be able to numb themselves to the environment that's around them. Second stage housing would be huge for a place like Kamloops. Available treatment that has more access, less barriers, and more transition planning to be able to return home to your community in a safe environment. Because if somebody is living on the streets that decides that they want to receive help and go into treatment, to go off to treatment for 3 months and go through that process to be returned back to be in the exact same environment that you were in prior to leaving to treatment, is not helping anybody create success. So I would say more permanent wraparound service shelter beds, more treatment options, and more second stage housing for recovery.
What are your thoughts about Housing First?
I think Housing First falls into that exact model of basic human needs: food, water, shelter, love. So if without those basic needs met, you can't feel safe and secure. And if you don't feel safe and secure, you can't excel onto that achievement and hierarchy of self. I understand why people don't want to stay in shelters. For some people, it's just not safe. For some people, it's too triggering. It's, you know, too traumatic. Accessibility with their pets. I know people that would rather, you know, sleep out on the streets than give up their pets. You know, that's the only connection and comfort that they have. So why would I risk that by going into a shelter when I can keep that connection and put myself at risk over risking losing that animal, right? So I think the Housing First initiative, when done properly, is the initiative that needs to be focused on. First of all, I'd like to just be able to just erase the stigma that comes with mental health and substance use for our folks. Just have people be able to see people as people and not their illness or not their substance use or not what they can or cannot do. I think I would just love to explore just a model that is flexible and receptive and for everybody and all of their needs. And again, just starting with that the basic human needs of being able to provide people with what they need to feel safe and secure and not have those barriers or those roadblocks in front of them, and just, I guess, a ton of money just to build all these programs and these services and be able to work with, you know, agencies and political figures and other community partners to really have a focused, driven, educated approach to, you know, helping everyone.
I wish for, if I was given a magic wand, I would wish, I think, for two things. I think I would wish for better programming and availability for people to access help like what we offer for our clients. We help our clients navigate all the systems. We're able to help them find and secure housing and maintain their housing. More people like our team need to exist. The other thing I wish I could change too is the stigma in our community. I think that the not in my back door mentality needs to change, and we need to understand that these people are people at the end of the day, and they are worthy of living a good standard of life.
Party messages that you'd like to let the viewer know before we leave today?
I think just remembering just to be kind, and that nobody knows everybody's story and nobody knows what everybody has been through, and just remembering that, you know, there could be a point in time where you could find yourself in the same situation as a lot of the people out there, and that you don't know their story and you don't know their reasoning behind what they do. And so just remembering that everybody out there is somebody's daughter, son, mother, father, cousin, sister, aunt, grandparent, and they all come from somewhere and they all have people that care about them, and just be kind.
Thank you so much for joining us and for taking the time to hear the stories of our beautiful participants. We hope they have been as meaningful and thought-provoking to you as they have been to us. In our next episode, Into the Darkness, we will address some of the darker aspects of homelessness through the eyes and voices of those with lived experience. We look forward to introducing you to our next guests.